There's this problem that I think so many of us face every single day. And it's this simple inability to just be quiet. So we're going to dive into a story that gets right to the very heart of this.
A wise guru once said this: most of our sorrows are born from one thing, the inability to be silent. Wow. Just let that sink in for a second. It's a really powerful idea, and it's pretty much the foundation of the whole story we're about to explore. But what does it really mean for us?
So, our story kicks off with a disciple in an ashram. And his biggest spiritual hurdle? Well, it wasn't some kind of demon or a complicated philosophy. Nope, it was the constant, non-stop sound of his own voice.
I mean, just look at this disconnect between how this guy saw himself and who he actually was. In his own head, he was this wise, superior, really special person. But the reality? He was just a source of constant, draining noise, gossip, complaining, always patting himself on the back. He was literally hooked on the sound of his own voice.
This just kept going, day in and day out, until finally his guru decided, all right, that's enough. It was time for a real lesson, a challenge that was about to completely change the course of this disciple's life.
And the challenge? It was so simple. 1 entire month of absolute silence. Not one word. And you know what? The disciple was almost insulted. He wanted some great vow, something big and impressive that felt worthy of him. To him, just being quiet? That seemed way too easy, almost beneath him.
Oh boy, but that arrogance did not last long. Day 1? Okay, he could handle it. By day 2, the vow already felt like this heavy weight. Day 3 brought this deep, awful restlessness. And by day 4, he was basically trapped inside his own head, just desperate to speak, to argue, to say anything. But he was stuck. This inner battle got so intense that it actually started making him sick. He ran to his guru and scribbled on a tablet that he was suffocating, that his head felt like it was about to explode. This simple act of not talking was literally making him feel like he was going crazy. He was ready to quit. He wanted out. His guru's response was simple. The choice was his. But then he added this little insight that just cut right to the bone. A person who can't handle a small vow can't handle life. Oof. Stung by how true that felt, the disciple chose to stick with it. And that one decision, well, it led him to a much, much deeper discovery.
So let's jump ahead. We're 15 days in, halfway through the vow, and he goes to his guru again. But this time it wasn't about the physical struggle. It was a completely new and honestly a way more confusing problem.
He explained, look, my mouth is shut, but my mind is screaming. It was this non-stop chaotic storm of arguments, questions, and all these old complaints playing on a loop. He'd managed to silence the noise coming out of his mouth, only to find an even louder roar inside his own head.
And bam, that's the light bulb moment. He was finally getting the difference between just not talking and achieving true silence. This wasn't about the tongue, it was about the stillness of the mind itself.
He knew, deep down, he was never going to find this inner quiet in the middle of all the daily chatter of the ashram. To really silence his mind, he had to go deeper. So, with his guru's blessing, he left it all behind and walked into the deep solitude of the forest.
Now, you gotta understand, this wasn't some instant cure. For the first few weeks alone out there, the noise inside his head actually got worse. It got louder, more intense, like a final, raging storm before, very slowly, the voices started to fade away. For the first time ever, with absolutely no one else to talk to, he was forced to really listen to himself. And what he heard was haunting. Every useless, unkind, arrogant thing he had ever said came bubbling back up. He had to just sit there with the echoes of his own noise.
But, as the sun rose and set, day after day, in that total quiet, something started to shift. The inner storm calmed down, the ghosts of old arguments started to lose their power, and one by one, the voices inside him just fell silent.
And in the incredible stillness that followed, something amazing happened. For the first time, he could actually hear. The wind moving through the trees, the sound of birds, the flow of a stream somewhere far off. All these sounds that had been there the whole time, but were totally drowned out by his own inner and outer noise. After 3 months, he came back to the ashram, and the man who walked back through those gates, he was not the same guy who left. He was completely and visibly transformed.
That restless, impatient man who was always driven by this need to prove himself, he was gone. And in his place was this person who just radiated a deep, solid calm. And when he finally did choose to speak, his words weren't loud or demanding. They were measured, they were kind, and they carried the weight of real peace.
And this right here, this is the ultimate lesson. True silence isn't some external vow you take, it's an inner state that you learn to cultivate. He could now talk, interact, and live in the world, all while carrying that incredible stillness inside of him. The noise of the world just couldn't touch the quiet within.
And his guru, well, he just ties it all together perfectly. He explained that we spend so much of our precious life energy on useless talk, arguing, explaining ourselves, justifying things, and this constant outward spray of energy is what keeps us from ever turning our focus inward, where real peace is actually found.
So how can we actually use this in our own lives? It's not about running off to a force for 3 months, right? It starts with really small but really powerful steps. Speak only when it's truly necessary and helpful. Practice listening way more than you speak. And maybe the most important one, learn to just watch your own thoughts, kind of like clouds passing by, without getting swept up in their storm.
And that leaves us with one last question to just carry with us. In a world that is constantly screaming for our attention and our opinion, what might you discover if you just stopped talking for a little while? What would you finally be able to hear?